Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Things you shouldn't have seen. Anyone ever come across some secret squirrel things that you shouldn't have by accident?
I live in a small town in Alberta, Canada. This happened in the 90s. Between the town and my uncle's farm is the town graveyard. After a night of playing video games with my cousins, I decided to walk home. It was probably after 3 a.m. It was pitch black, but I could see lights and hear sounds coming from the graveyard as I approached. I went around the graveyard and through a field. If this field was full of cars, this is where people holding a funeral usually park. I was a dumb kid, so I decided to get closer, and I saw around 30 people chanting and burning things. They were all in robes and hoods, not clan robes. I was scared and creeped out and snuck out of there as fast as I could. I always wondered what the hell I saw.
Driving on the Texas highway. See, a cop car has pulled somebody over on a dirt road off of the main highway. Slow down because I'm curious and want to see this. The cop is leaning casually on the guy's car when said driver is lighting up a cigarette. They both see me coming and stare me down until I speed off. It hits me that where I'm at is totally desolate and literally no other traffic is around. Probably witnessed a casual drug deal between a dirty cop and a dealer. Another time, also in Texas, driving on a different but equally remote stretch of highway because it's how most of the state is. Early morning, I've been driving for a while and I'm tired. Still see a beautiful sunrise. Also see a man in the middle of nowhere walking maybe 30 or 40 yards from the road. Slow down because I think he might be a stranded motorist. See, he's holding something. Looks like a bundle in a blanket. He stares at me down but keeps walking further and doesn't even break his stride. Well, gang, let's say we got the hell out of here. Speed off. Call Texas Highway Patrol. 5 minutes later, see 2 cruisers fly past me in the opposite direction on the interstate. Find out later I drove through a part of Texas called the Killing Fields that has been a notorious dumping ground for serial killers since the 70s. Google that if you don't believe me. Never hear anything about the guy that I saw. Could have been a body, could have been weapons, could have just been trash, but still. Basically just stay out of Texas, kids.
Reminded me of the time I saw this woman in the middle of nowhere. I decided to go for a drive. My sister tags along with me because I get bored. I head down a curvy, desolate road with no streetlights. I enjoy this area because you can see stars and appreciate the night sky with little to no light pollution. This time is an incredibly nice night for such things. Moonless January, clear sky with no clouds, and at 10 degrees, no humidity to distort the sky. Hit a few spots I know are cool for stargazing. Overall, 10 out of 10 night. My sister is impressed. Drive back home, heading north, and pass through this stretch of road that has no returns for at least 4 miles each way. The nearest town is around 6 miles each way. Have all lights on cause deer like to jump out of nowhere. Exiting this long, gentle corner when headlights illuminate something ahead. It's a woman walking south on the northbound road. Instantly drawn to her due to the odd time of night, 1 a.m., and the fact that she's not dressed for the weather outside. She's just wearing some sweatpants and a sweatshirt. It's 10 degrees out. She looks like she just came out of the 80s. I can't make up her face, but I can tell she's around 28 to 34, white and around 130 pounds. Drive past the woman. My sister is visibly worried. I decided to turn around to see if she needs help. Maybe her car wouldn't start or she got dumped in the middle of nowhere. Sister doesn't want me to turn around but calm her down and remind her I got my gun with me. After a few miles, I turned around and kept an eye out for the woman. Nothing. Driving southbound now and reaching the other town, no sign of the woman. Turn around and drive northbound, no woman. Never found a stranded car. We never saw that woman again. I'm pretty sure that woman was dead.
Damn. Reminds me of that time my brother and I were driving home from one of our farms that isn't connected with the rest of our property. It was late at night, and when we were shutting the gate behind us before pulling out onto the main road, a truck came up the road and stopped in front of us. The driver kicked out a teenage early 20s girl. Like, right in front of us in the middle of nowhere. We just watched, and she started walking down the road to nowhere in complete darkness without even realizing that we were there. Don't know what happened to her. Still creeps me out today.
In Chicago for a job interview, staying at a fairly nice hotel, nothing fancy but not the ghetto, or so I thought. At like 2 in the morning, I woke up to a fight going on in the room next door to me because of thin walls. Hear a guy yelling incoherently, and some woman also arguing, but it's slower and kind of slurred. Call downstairs. They say they will send somebody to sort it out right away. Half an hour goes by, and nothing but them still arguing. Pissed because I need sleep, half open the door whilst still groggy. See 2 men, one an overweight 50-ish bald dude, and a younger skinny guy in a dress shirt and pants. The fat dude is whispering, arguing with the young guy who is just shaking his head saying, "Yes, I know, sir," over and over. Thought he might have been for the hotel until I saw a very obvious drug addict he was holding by the arm. She's barely standing, saying how he promised she would get some sleep tonight and then could call her friends. He's holding this literal zombie, but not paying attention until they see me. Awkward stare down. I tell them to shut up, or I'm calling the cops, and slam the door. Don't sleep a wink because I think a pimp is going to slap his way through the door to get to me. Eventually they leave and can hear the same woman's barely functioning tone outside. I still feel bad about it, wishing I had called the cops or something. Gave the hotel a horrible review and left a note about prostitutes in the envelope they leave for the guests in each room.
Walking home because the pub is closed. Glance down the alleyway, see a woman talking to a man. They don't notice me, so I get a little closer. Can't see the woman's face, but can see her better than the man. The man is dressed in much darker clothing. Can see their breath because of the cold. The woman pulls out a gun. Being a gun owner myself, I can respect her trigger discipline. Doesn't point it at him and he barely reacts, so she must not be threatening him. The man is just smoking and drinking. The woman is talking animatedly. Lots of gesturing. Too far away to make out what she's saying and can't read lips if I can't see them. The man puts his drink, covered by a brown paper bag, in the trash, pulls a purse out of his jacket, counts out some money, hands her the money and takes the gun. She goes to leave in my direction. Heart stops, but he points her in the other direction. He gestures at me with his head, says something I can't make out. She looks in my direction. She looks as scared as I feel, reaches into her purse. The man grabs her arm and visibly snaps at her, realize she's scared of him. She leaves down the other exit of the alleyway. He walks right at me, realize he's still got the gun. He puts it away and drops his cigarette, lights another one before he gets to me. Figure he won't do anything outside the dark of the alleyway. Up close he looks super tired, too scared to make eye contact. He tells me I won't tell anyone and I will not approach him or the woman if I ever see them again. He leaves. Nothing overtly supernatural happened, but definitely feel like I shouldn't have seen that.
Well, I guess not super secret squirrel kind of thing, but I did stumble upon a meeting of the local city council basically discussing rigging votes for local laws they were about to pass. I work front desk at a bunch of luxury condos in the middle of downtown. We're talking $500,000 for a 2-bedroom kind of place. This means that I roam around doing work for them, and I remain invisible and harmless to them for the most part. I was cleaning up a closet in the meeting room on the top floor. A couple of board members live here and invited the rest of the council to meet with them in private so they could basically tell everyone how to vote, and that even though they were supposed to be meeting with citizens and the population before passing anything, they were meeting in secret and passing anything and everything they wanted to. No one knew these secret meetings were happening, and if people found out about it, they would be pissed. They planned on passing a bunch of ordinance and rules for the bars and restaurants downtown, because they knew no one was going to show up to the surprise vote on a Wednesday night. I stayed hidden in the closet and listened to the whole thing. Then when they were gone, I called my friends who owned bars in town and told them what was about to happen. Like 10 bars worth of owners and workers showed up, pissed about what the council was trying to do. If they ever found out it was me, I would be so fired.
I swear this really happened. My neighbors and friends invited me to go shooting with them. The 4 of us filled the trunk of a car with guns and ammo, piled in and headed for the mountains. This was in Seattle. Nearest mountains are about 30 minutes away, so we drive down the freeway for a while, get off on some random exit in the middle of nowhere, and start heading up old logging trails,
It was pretty ridiculous off-roading in an old 90s something sedan, but my friends were immigrants, so W&E. Okay, so we're driving up these crazy roads for miles, probably for about 30 minutes. Apparently my friends have been shooting here several times. We came to a clearing where we planned to go shooting. Keep in mind, we're 30 minutes from the nearest legitimate road, high in the mountains, surrounded by millions of acres of forest. As we enter the clearing, we immediately notice a large gathering of hundreds of people loosely arranged in a circle and all wearing identical red-hooded cloaks. I can't recall seeing any cars, although we were pretty distracted by the situation, so maybe I forgot. Several of them turned to look at us. Dozens of others maintained their focus on whatever crazy crap they were up to. As a bunch of them began walking towards us, my immigrant friends all started freaking out. I was in the back seat, so it was hard to hear, but the driver had a brief discussion with one of the cultists. Then we GTFO of there ASAP. I know this story lacks an interesting conclusion, but it's real. And to this day, I have no idea what those people were doing or what they were about. Anyone know of cults that wear red-hooded cloaks in particular?
Be reading in my car in a tiny parking lot near the center of town. Notice a dude with a leather jacket checking around the whole parking lot, looking under cars. 5 minutes later, a car comes and just stays in the middle of the tiny parking lot. Another big black car comes behind her 2 minutes later. The guy from earlier comes out the passenger side, and a big black dude with a black leather jacket from the driver's side, both with their hand on their back like to reach for a gun. An old dude comes out from the first car and just stays there watching them. The leather jacket dude from the passenger side gets to the old dude and begins to frisk him, clearly looking for a weapon. That's when it came to me. I really should not be seeing this. Started my car and bolted out of here trying to act like I didn't see anything. I live in France, so guns aren't something you see often.
Be in elementary school, probably 6 or 7 years old. The school library had a door that was hidden in a really half-ass way behind a bookcase. The bookcase wasn't even tall enough to cover the entire door, so everyone knew it was there and wanted to know what was behind it. I even moved the bookcase once to get to it, but the door was locked. I was at the school after hours one night, and I went to the library. Realized the bookcase is moved and the door is open and the librarian nowhere in sight. Now's my chance. Turns out the room is full of just shelves of VHS tapes. None of them have cases, just pieces of tape with labels. Before I can read what any of them say, the librarian shows up and tells me to get out of there. She says, "Those are for grown-ups." It isn't till years later that I realize apparently the children's library had a secret VHS room.
Just use surveillance tapes, maybe?
Never thought of that. That's probably more likely.
Somewhat related. I sent my story to this guy who studies white owls and UFOs. I actually forgot I sent it to him, but here it is.
A young man named Joe saw both a UFO and owls within minutes of each other. This happened in 2012 when he was 20 years old. These sightings took place at about 3 in the morning while he was driving with 4 friends in his car. Joe and his close friend Dave were in the front seats when they both saw a brilliant blue light descending in the sky. Joe said, "It was bright as hell, so I couldn't make out the shape of the craft, but it was high enough to pass through the clouds." Both Joe and Dave were speechless until after they had lost sight of it beyond the tree line. After the shock wore off, they told the 3 people in the back seats what they had just seen. They dropped off one of the passengers and began the drive back to their friend's house. They were traveling about 55 miles per hour when a white owl flew right up alongside their car with its head turned, staring directly at the passengers. This owl was flying right next to the passenger window, close enough that Dave could have reached out and touched it. Even though they were moving fast, the owl hovered there for about 5 seconds and then flew off. Then, less than a mile down the road, another white owl did the exact same thing again, staring sideways while flying right up next to the car and staring in Dave's window. Suddenly, everyone in the car began screaming, as if they were all feeling the same primal fear. Joe doesn't understand why, but he slammed on the brakes and everyone yelled at him to keep driving. Afterwards, no one could explain why they were all screaming. The strange way the owl was flying right up next to the car triggered a feeling none of the passengers had ever felt before. Joe said, "The owls were almost sideways while staring directly into the window. It didn't make sense how they were doing it. It's hard to explain. The physics didn't add up." Later, when he tried to bring it up to the other passengers, they all seemed to want to bury the memory. Joe said, "They acted as though they would be punished if they talked about it." Joe saw another white owl while driving at night. This was about a week after his initial sighting of the bright blue light descending in the sky. Curiously, he was again with Dave for this follow-up owl sighting. Joe had been living in that area for about 10 years, and until that week he had never once seen an owl. Joe has since seen the same bright blue light several more times, one time with Dave. The odd behavior of these owls, and the unsettling description of them flying sideways, seems more like some sort of hologram than any real bird in flight. The typical screen memory implies a gray alien that is cloaking itself with the image of an owl by projecting this idea into the mind of the observer. Usually these owls are standing still in the middle of a road, making this kind of deception easy to comprehend. But what of an owl flying at 55 miles per hour? It seems doubtful that a gray alien could be zooming in the air alongside a speeding car. So, what did this car full of people actually see? Joe's account of a car full of people screaming in primal fear parallels my own experience from 2010 with my friend Natasha, where we both awoke while camped in a tent screaming without knowing why. This is described later in the book.
I had something happen to me like this in the early 90s. I was driving up Ontario Highway 6 to Tobermory late at night. This is northern Ontario rural, so hardly any other cars on the road. I was a dumb young kid and would fly up that road like 110 miles per hour at times. I have a very hazy memory of an owl landing in front of my car on the road and looking at me for a sec. I didn't remember much else about that drive. I basically just zoned out for a couple of hours driving from Guelph to Tobermory. This was very weird as I was somehow stopped on the highway looking at an owl that was looking at me. It is just a fragment of a memory. I have always had a huge fear of the dark, windows at night, and gray aliens in particular. I have some other instances of possible screen memories that I never had investigated. I get a feeling that if I go down that particular rabbit hole, I might not come back.
Be me. Living in Eastern Europe, a rural village next to a large river. The area is a big plain with small woody areas and fields. Be around 17. I studied in a city far away, but every few weekends I came home and met with my childhood friends. We had this old habit of going to the outskirts of the village with cheap booze, coke, and sausages in the afternoon, basically roamed around on the plain between the crops. We did the same thing that evening. We were walking out from the village, drinking and casually talking, telling jokes and old stories, etc. Sun is starting to set. We see a woman. Note that we're on a plain. The next hills are like 40 kilometers away, so we can see really far away with binoculars. A few kilometers away, walking towards our position. We can't make anything out of it, though we found it creepy because literally no one would willingly go that far out. Workers go with tractors and cars, etc. Besides, there is nothing there. We ignore it but change our direction and we walk towards a patch of trees. We forget about the woman. We are a little tipsy, but not so much. There wasn't that much booze. It is almost completely dark now. A guy notices something and yells in a muffled voice that she's coming. We look around. The woman is 30 meters away. We are creeped out, pointed our lights at her. None of us ever saw her. Our village is really small, so this is a dead giveaway that something weird is going on. The woman looks to be around 45. We ask how we can help and what she is doing out here. No answers. She comes at us at a pretty fast pace. We start backing up because she's really close. She approaches us at a few paces. We lose it and start running with all our stuff. We run towards the village through the trees and to a dirt road. Look around. No sign of the woman. We change our direction so we lose her. A few minutes later, we spot her coming out of another patch of trees. She's heading for us again. We threaten to call the police, but she doesn't answer. There is a lot of folk bullshit about things like this, men of the woods, so we are spooked. She walks much faster than us and is starting to close the distance. It's like she's in a trance or something. A guy calls the police officer of the village. He says he'll come and look around. She's a few meters close. She wears jeans and a white shirt, which is really out of place. We bolt again, decide to shake her off. We run into another patch of trees, we cross a ditch and head for a small bunker we made out of wooden branches a few years ago to hide. We gasp for air but try to remain silent. A few minutes later, we hear footsteps approaching. It's her. She goes at her usual fast pace, but she doesn't spot us. She's about 20 meters from us when she stops and starts looking and listening around. We do not say a single word. Then as a deux ex machina, we see the headlights of the police car in the distance as it approaches on the dirt road from the village. She notices too and starts running away. We wait for a minute, then ran to the police car. The two policemen come out. We tell them what happened. They say we should go back to the village, they'll look around. We ran back to our friend's house. The police came a few hours later. They haven't found her and tell there won't be a search. There are no missing persons around and she didn't do anything. We still don't know who the hell she was.
Last year, early spring around Elizabethton, Tennessee, driving up a dirt road in Cherokee National Forest to find a chill camp spot. Bro and I are gonna hunt some squirrels. The sun was setting on our journey up to 3,000 feet elevation. Nothing but mountains and sunset. Gorgeous. As the road levels off at the top, we approach a clear cutting for those massive power lines just behind the next bend. There is a glow behind the bend, so we slow down thinking it's someone coming the opposite direction. It is not a car. Just aside of the tower is an unmarked white van. Behind the van, laid out neatly on the ground, was plastic drop cloth. The glow was from 4 mini stadium lights illuminating the plastic. A squat, balding man dressed in a plain tee and shorts holding a Nikon pulls the scene together. Nope, right out of there. Drove down the next morning to check it out, but there was nothing left behind. I'd love to know what he was up to.
Be me. Always been close with my boss. The dude is loaded. He invites me over for some beers to watch a football game. Big-ass house with a big-ass projector. We ordered some carry-out pizza. He says he'll go to pick it up and for me to just stay in the living room and kitchen areas. My snoop gets the better of me and I start looking around. Walk into his bedroom. Handcuffs next to his bed. Figure he's into something freaky. Open up his closet. Suits, ties, things like that. Hear a knock from the other side. Find a false wall and slide it to the side. There's a guy tied up in a gimp suit with a ball gag in his mouth. He looks at me and makes an excitement sound. His eyes are covered with a zipper. I slowly slide shut at the false door, but he's looking right at my direction. Don't know if he can actually see through the zipper. Shut the closet and walk back to the living room and wait for my pizza. I never told him anything about it, but I figured his little gimp told him that someone walked in on it because he never invited me back and stopped talking to me like a friend, even though I didn't really care if he had a slave.
Dad was a blue-collar mechanic. Gets old, was never good with money anyhow, but in his age he had to work less. 15, can't work real jobs yet, so I do under-the-table stuff and make peanuts. Gave all my money to my family. We never openly said it, but money was always a concern. Suddenly one day it's not. Almost overnight it changes. Dad also becomes a bit more stressed out than usual. New rule, don't go in his room ever, especially his closet. Naturally curious, he says it's because his shotgun is there, but we were raised around guns, so... Come home early from school one day. Decide to snoop. Peek into his closet and find scales, bags, and tons of weed and shrooms. And that's how I found out my dad was dealing drugs. He eventually moved on to coke and pills. It got weird for a while. This is more or less the same way my aunt and uncle found out my cousin was a Minecraft YouTuber. The cousin story isn't all that exciting. That side of my family is pretty distant. We don't hate them or anything, but I see them a few times a year tops. Said cousin was always weird. Typical neckbeard neat. Tubby, unkept, awkward as hell, so basically no social life. His parents thought he might have been gay, and after a while figured he had no social life whatsoever. Anyway, became more concerned he'd never do anything with his life. Spends all day on his computer. One day he left it on or something when he went out and my aunt was cleaning and decided to use it. I don't know. I never found out the specific details and didn't want to ask. Pretty sure he had a folder full of illegal material. They confront him with it. They argue for literally days. My mom gets calls about it, but wouldn't tell me what was going on at the time. I assumed somebody was dying, but my dad flat out told me what was going on. Yeah, your cousin might be a lion maker. I honestly don't know though, so don't quote me on that. He was sent to a treatment center, basically a church group, because they of course have the best history in these kinds of situations. He moves out not too long after. Nobody has spoken to him in almost 7 years. We will never bring it up again.
I used to have a boring life. Then I came to Florida. Trailer park. not a bad-looking one. Typically stand outside at night to enjoy the glorious weather. Trailer behind is empty. Guy goes to it while ducking down, stuffs something under the skirting. Oh hey, now there's a drug stash and he didn't even see me. 10 minutes later, other dude storms out of their place next door to the empty one, asks what I saw and says he's scared. This means he's willing to shoot. Many misthink that stand your ground only requires being scared in order to shoot. Activate survival routine.x. I didn't see anything. Goes on about it for 20 minutes. I finally get him to fuck off. Cops show up later. Don't find drugs. Bust them anyway for some other drugs they must not have hidden so well. Take them away. Look under that trailer in a few days. Bag is gone. Move from there for unrelated reasons. Now just outside city limits. More land, not in a park. Still a trailer, gotta work on that part. Landlord decides to illegally rent out all of his crappy RVs. Druggies move into the smallest and shittiest one. Immediately hound me for rides. How to be the hero among broke asses of all stripes. Have a car. Fork over a few rides so they won't steal my stuff. Notice I'm now being followed by unmarked cars. Figure it's cops, hope I don't get caught up in any shit. Most of the rides seem legit, just taking them to mooch food off of the suckers they'd accumulated. Sometimes not so legit. To a motel, it's a hotbed. But I think they were doing drug deals. Not my business. They finally get kicked out for not paying rent. Take them to the motel, this time they stay. Good riddance, assholes. Week later, cop comes over, does not knock or anything, just reaches under my car. I'll bet they were retrieving a tracker. Nothing comes of it.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.